This video is for ages 13 and up, because this is going to get darker from here.
Because this is my destiny.
As you wish, Galvatron.
Behold, my new world awaits me!
Special.
Glory to Decepticon!
Hello, and welcome to the finale of Convoy's Trauma Truck Show Trademark, Superlink Edition, where I watch both shows multiple times so you don't have to. You might say that I'm getting tired of this, but not necessarily. It is the footage that's getting most annoying to listen to over and over again to make sure everything's okay. Yes, I listen to back my old videos as inspiration. Like I said, this is a series I took upon myself, knowing no one's going to look at them. If you found my videos and discussion entertaining, that's great. I'm glad you stayed. Now let's go what you're all waiting for. We are talking about the elephant in the room, Galvatron. I've been avoiding him since the beginning of the series, and the fitting end to what we're talking about in depth about Convoy's appearance in Superlink. It doesn't mean that I'm going to stop about Superlink. Far from it. There are other characters and specific scenes from the show that can be broken down into. Look at the next big project, UT Megatron, right after I'm making UT Convoy. That being said, we continue on the video. I'm probably the first person you're going to say about Convoy and Megatron's relationship in UT series. Their relationship is the most destructive and the most toxic one so far in the franchise. It is something that the new generation of Transformers fans are missing out, and today I dearly miss this version of Megatron, and he really needs to come back. In the lore, Convoy and Megatron weren't friends at all. When the war broke out on Cybertron, it states in the lore, Convoy was a Cybertronian warrior sent out against the threat of the Decepticons, who later on met up with Scavenger and trained him to fight. After making a name for himself, he is granted the Matrix of leadership for his heroism. By the time when Megatron became interested in Convoy and is impressed by his skills, Megatron tested Convoy, and the two sparked their never-ending fight in the series. That is when Unicron witnessed the war on Cybertron and used his own cells to produce the Minicons to see what the two factions would do with them. This created an arms race, and the war spread to Earth, and we see the relationship at this point who can dominate the other. You wonder why the robots on Megatron's team still follow him, and Armada on Superlink gives you the reason. Megatron provides them safety, and in return, they fight for the cause, yet gaslighting them. There is no way besides endless suffering or death. We learn this firsthand of his cruelty against Starscream and Grap. Then in Superlink, his powers has increased that he can put a virus of his own will to make a robot who is vulnerable, easily molded what he desires, and his new powers have long-lasting effects of those who are afflicted. In the 10-year gap since the previous season, Convoy and Megatron's relationship has changed from robots who want to fight and dominate to Galvatron want to see how much he can slowly hurt Convoy and his teammates. Galvatron now has become more malicious compared to the previous show. It is just Unicron trying to possess him slowly throughout the show and bringing out Galvatron he truly wants to be, and we see the struggle in the show. He becomes so cruel since the previous season that I can say he will get his own video series of his own when I get to it. So why is this important to Convoy's dilemma? When you apply to Convoy's broken complex and failing to save Megatron from the previous season, he wasn't able to save his physical other half, the darkness in his heart, the embodiment of Megatron. However, Megatron is his own character and prefers chaos over control. Convoy holding the last piece of Megatron's thread so they cannot get stuck into the black hole. Megatron is willing to cut off the bond Convoy wants to believe will blossom and have a friendship. He is the one who doesn't need Convoy's kindness and spat out a few last words before getting sucked in the black hole. Basically, Megatron told Convoy, whatever happens next, and they meet again, Megatron is beyond saving. when Megatron is now reborn as Galvatron. It really does show Convoy wants to cling on what is left, but he cannot let go that Galvatron is a complete different character now. Galvatron really punishes Convoy for his malice, as his malice really hurts the people he loves. A big example is not saving Inferno in time, when he places virus within Inferno. We see Inferno struggles to resist and the temptation of becoming a Decepticon. At the end of episode 30 in Superlink, not Energon, Inferno is still struggling to resist, and then his body or show dies to reborn again. It is a cop-out, as I want characters to die and never come back as a consequence of Convoy living with the rest of the series. It does play a role at the end game of the show, where Convoy bonded with his teammates over the runtime and saved the universe, as well restoring the hope Convoy lost since the previous season. I did want to separate the video of his relationship with Galvatron and why I didn't elaborate why Galvatron is technically Convoy's other half, or you might say, his darker half he suppressed himself. The thing he truly fears the most is becoming a monster like Galvatron. That is what Convoy perceives himself, as the audience knows Galvatron's side the entire time. Like I said in my other videos, Convoy refused to believe or accept the fact he is one-to-one shell of Megatron, even though he fights and what believes is right, thinking that Decepticon's on the wrong end. It ignores the fact on Megatron, as he shares the same mental capacity as well. Megatron isn't stupid. Well, sometimes. The show writes him like a big old loser. Well, aren't they all losers? Well, that's not the point. Megatron, despite his own beliefs, still manages to be a cohesive leader, and being able to lead a team of Decepticons, believing his cause is right. I mean, what Megatron does isn't wrong. He knows his placement in the world, and what he desires is his own rule and his own way of leading the path of destruction. He chooses his own way of freedom, but is chaos. Unlike Convoy, Megatron is able to get what he wants, and is able to make those desires happen in the present. That is the reason why Megatron is a beloved character, and why Decepticons follow him. Megatron promised who are following him, instead of those desires as a wish, making them in the future. Megatron is able to give those who are vulnerable and desires to change, and is able to manifest them into reality. Once that promise is done, the Decepticons who believe him follow him into that promise, and why they work for him in the return. A personality trait Convoy lacks, as he promised everyone a better future. It is a bit slower, but the amount of teamwork and blind trust is what Convoy lays the foundation of his own justice. Convoy wants to give the courage to everyone and believe for themselves the right way to defeat evil. Yet we all know Convoy, or Optimus Prime, wants to keep the status quo. The people who desire change, now underneath Convoy, don't get that feeling of result, or they truly aren't safe underneath him, or being able to have a sturdy team, or better yet, a family. His teammates, the Autobots, sees him as his family, but sometimes his team is being shoved away and made them all feel as they're not safe. That is why joining Megatron's team is bad, but it makes you feel important. He makes you believe that Convoy is a puppet and not saying his own mind. Convoy believes in a system where it could change, but then you realize nothing has changed at all. And that is why I love Megatron's character a lot. He isn't great on paper, but what he does, you don't expect Optimus would do. Megatron doesn't take no for an answer. His position as leader of the Decepticons just amazes me how he could lead a team like this. But then you realize his job is dirty, and his personality matches that person what Megatron is, which is a level of respect you must give him. He's really doing it fairly efficiently, a lot better than what Optimus has been doing, and why the reason people love Megatron and Armada and Energon. However, we're saving the Cybertron Megatron to his own video. He's a complete different character from another universe, and he's a lot more pompous in the show. So moving on. Optimus, or Convoy, has his own fears of losing the things he loves, is why himself collapses a lot more than he should. The entire foundation that he set up to believe in starts to crumble apart the moment he stops blindly trusting in his friends, as he did back in Armada. He just couldn't let it go of his worries that one day he won't be around when Unicron comes back. And there won't be anyone to stop it, the destruction and the chaos. Even the return of the nothingness or the primordial, that is something Galvatron took advantage of this season, the weakness that Convoy really falls into. By the time we reach Wing Dagger's death, is where Convoy starts pulling his act together and really have to rely on his friends in order to win against Galvatron. That slow build-up of Convoy starting to trust his friends little by little, and by the end of the season, his own weight of his own burdens is now gone. Without Kicker stepping into helping Convoy, I don't think Convoy will ever see himself improving to make him a better individual. Convoy made so many mistakes in his life, and in Superlink canon, he still does. He isn't perfect. The father and son bond between Kicker and Convoy is more prevalent in this season compared to Hotshot's relationship with Convoy. As I normally see Hotshot as more as the Optimus Prime route, but a lot more professional in the writing stance, as he's supposed to be a successor or the next line of Primes rather than a father-son relationship. It's more like a partnership than anything. However, his relationship with Kicker is one of the most highlights of the Energon show. The bond the two made at the end of the season, Convoy realized his own faults of the foundation he set up. He used to trust everything, or giving the people the benefit of a doubt, they can become good people. That is what humanity is, and Convoy lost it. He lost his trust in his friends. He lost trust within himself to make the choice of what is right. He wants to save Megatron from the darkness from the Armada season. He hopes one day he could save the robot who hurt his people. Megatron, of all, hurt Convoy, and that mindset, he couldn't do a thing to prevent Megatron's spiral of darkness. Convoy believes he can still do it, but when Megatron purposely cut his own threads, as he knows truly in Megatron's heart, he doesn't want to be saved. Megatron understands his placement in the universe, and he makes that statement clear to Convoy as he will never become good, and he will never will. As in lore, they were never friends or had a previous relationship before the war broke out. They were always enemies from the start. Correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't read the comics fully, and yet I will make videos on them, so please stop asking. I'm going to take a small break here, because this is a lot to take in. So let's talk about Convoy and Galvatron's design. First, let's talk about Galvatron's design first, as it is the most important to the storyline. This is the scene of Megatron resurrecting as Galvatron. It is one of my favorite versions of Megatron coming back to life. His followers, Cyclonus, Tidewave, etc., uses a bunch of Energon stolen from Alpha Q when they find Megatron's lifeless body intact in the rock. I guess he wasn't spaghettied from the black hole. That was a missed opportunity. The ground shakes and an influx of Energon coming like veins into a spark, and then Megatron shatters the rock prison now ascended as Galvatron. The face of anger, almost like a guy waking up from his slumber and he's ready to beat up someone. This is so awesome. I love the writing continues from Micron Legend canon, and this is like the best part. I always want to talk about his ascendance from his old form to his new form. He has this hulking stature that demands respect. Now Galvatron ascended to what I call a god or an archangel. I would know, and what a stretch I made myself into, but if I'm not wrong, to think this way. Megatron is usually seen in media as a false god or a false prophet, while Optimus Prime is similar to Buddhism, or Buddha. We'll get to that part later. Maybe, I don't know. Galvatron now has a pair of wings, and his white is an off-white, showing as the audience, Megatron is past saving. He is fully committing to evil. Well, we got back from Micron Legend, not Armada, mind that the season finale where Megatron states to Convoy that he will follow the darkness while Convoy seeks the light. That is why Convoy in episode 51 of Superlink does not interfere with Galvatron at all. Convoy knows in his heart Galvatron refuses to change his way is because he doesn't understand his own destiny. Galvatron plunges himself with Unicron Spark into the Super Energon that Primus used to create a new sun in Q's planetary system. I don't know if Primus died in this scene while scooping up the pool of Super Energon, or that the Super Energon is Primus. Your thoughts as good as mine. So leave it down below for a debate if Primus gave up their energy and merged back with Unicron, his brother, in recreating the sun, because in lore, they were once one, created by the One. That was the last noble thing he did. Galvatron knows he isn't a good person, but he doesn't want someone in control like a puppet. He wants to become his own being and make up his own opinions, and not some fate telling him otherwise. That is what makes him interesting, his ignorance to change, and what made him grow wings and carrying him off to the sun. There's also a lot of Icarus and Greek mythos that I miss, but saving that for later. Plus, I know there is someone who enjoys this stuff more than me. This stuff is supposed to be in their major. I'm just a chem and art major. I know. I read and watch things for fun. When you look at Convoy's design, you see he doesn't change much since the Armada, but somehow his size to almost being the same as any other Cybertron, besides linking up with another character in the show, thus keeping the status quo, or he wanted to be the same as everyone else. He doesn't want to see him as a towering stature, but they see Optimus as a friend, someone who is equal to any other Autobot. He wants to perceive that way as in the previous season. Making him the same as everyone else puts in perspective he doesn't want to make himself special or unique amongst the other teammates, which you see in my review. That's a major problem for me in the show. Due to the limited animation and perhaps they use Convoy's model as a base, isn't far-fetched that they kept remodeling Convoy to make the other characters to save on modeling and making the other models and bone ringing. If it exists, then there's no point of making it from scratch. Since Optimus lost his form of his head, turning into a sea creature was his trailer, the link-up are the major highlights in the show of the different combination Optimus can take. There's a lot of them, and the point is to sell toys. There's a lot of reference to mythos, of course, but I think his best form that he links up with is Wing Saver, because it is a form he deems to put his faith back into his friends again, to have his chances to win against the Decepticons. Okay, we're done here. I didn't know where to put this segment, so onwards. Even though Convoy is kind to everyone, it is not all the time people can be saved. That is something he had to let go. Not all the time people would agree with your stance. Sometimes people are interested and admire for that feat. It is the people's beliefs doesn't align with your own goals. They usually go into a path that fits for them. That is the majority of Convoy's conflict with Megatron Galvatron in the canon. Convoy doesn't see or understand what the other side desires, and come with a solution. The only times the sides do work together is when the larger threat is bigger than their own. Convoy wants to live more than anything else. When he's faced with Unicron for the first time and survive a black hole and having a taste of his own darkness all in one episode, that part didn't really affect him personality-wise, but they automatically changed back after Megatron's vacation. Convoy's faced with the dilemma of what he should do, even though it has been 10 years. It's hard to move on something like that. People moved on, but without you. Even though Convoy gave out his kindness, you have to think, was there ever a time someone appreciates him? Characters who are written with kindness eventually break apart. They don't even know what is worth fighting for, or what matters to them. They sacrifice their own personal dream to succeed in yours. When a character is kind to put up walls to tell us Convoy doesn't want to be hurt anymore, he neglects people who actually want his kindness. When Convoy understands he's not being appreciated by his own peers, the weight of his own existence comes into play if it is worth it to live on. The only person who really appreciates Convoy is, ironically, Megatron himself. He was the only one who truly understands Convoy for what he really is. He can show off his true self and not hide who he is. Megatron is the only character that really breaks free of Convoy's burdens. That itself is chaos, or what Convoy believes will fall into if that part slips out of him. The battle of his own personal control, or the sense of self, is very apparent in this season alone, and that as he's broken down into the point he doesn't know what to do. What we see now is an empty husk of no emotions or no feelings. That we know that is a very dangerous trait to have. For a Convoy, thinking that he's worthless is a dangerous thought to have if the only thing you have is hate. What brings him back is Kicker and the people who believe in the future. Convoy has an ego, but it lost his sense of self. He needs people to love him, to inspire his path, and help him achieve his dreams. He sees himself as a failure for not saving Megatron, his monstrous half, his equal. When he can't do it, he cannot show how emotionally vulnerable he is. He is, for the first time, afraid to die. However, this is a kid's show, and the show is very bloated to hide that deeper themes on Convoy's dilemma. He did return, like he promised, to Rad, but he came back wrong. Of course, out of writing stance, writers normally forget what they wrote in the show. That is why Energon's writing is jank, sometimes. They forgot what happened in Armada, and not waiting for the translation of the original script, you get something like Kicker's butchered up and cut up what he's supposed to be. Sometimes even mean to Misha and towards his family and the people who look up to him, which that isn't who Kicker is as a character. I usually ask the question of Convoy's conscience of what he discovered in Unicron being everywhere metaphorically and physically. The times he feels hatred and sadness, they were always Unicron. Convoy did not want to accept he had a piece of Unicron within his spark. Everyone does have a piece of Unicron somewhere. The character Laser Wave, Shock Blast, is the worst ending possible if Convoy tempted and fully lets Unicron fill in his heart. You see Laser Wave, just like G1's Starscream, and outright shows it despite the loyalty. He's more sneaky and easily get away with it. What Laser Wave didn't know, the consequences of having power, got punished by Unicron and became so aggressive that Laser Wave's mind degraded to the point that what Rampage theorized in the previous season. He become so primordial. This could happen to Convoy if he's ever let go of his struggles and lost all hope. Convoy would be nothing more than a mindless robot who craves nothing but bloodshed. He would continue to fight like this until someone has the courage to do it themselves, to put Convoy to rest. More or less likely, it's Skyfire would take that chance and do what is necessary. Skyfire, for who knows how long he has been with, has known Convoy longer than anyone else in the show. That friendship never breaks apart no matter the cost. Then it continues on to Superlink. He is the other character Convoy knows on a personal level. Well, besides Hotshot, Skyfire feels like the last Autobot that would be on his side. He is the first character he superlinks with, and Skyfire really respects him a lot despite the mistakes Convoy made that could potentially hurt the relationship, which a lot of people don't give credit to Skyfire, which is a shame of this version of the character doesn't come back in the recent media, because he delivers all-time points of stubborn ally and stays with him. An Autobot through and through. I just hope to see something like him again in the shows. He's that kind of character who doesn't lose hope regardless how much everyone has gone through. Skyfire is willing to see this to the end and wants to do this with Convoy, his leader. That is how strong their bond is in the show. So it is tough to separate canon from the show when the writers intended as a continuation of the Armada canon, when the Cybertron shows to add on the branching timelines off the Armada canon. I know it doesn't make sense, but it is true. I forget when writing, and it's hard to keep up with all the mistakes or the plot holes Energon and the original show, Superlink, lacks in the care of the writing department. In a sense, Energon's Superlink isn't for everyone as a Transformers fan. I just like it because of the previous season, and I want to know more about the world. I just want to know the consequences of a decade since the previous season, and this is how it said itself. I think the show provides enough for me of how the story wants to end. Or you just think that Energon Superlink is a complete waste of time, and the ending Armada is better, which is totally fair in every way. You don't have to like a show because I told you so. That's good. I'm just saying, someone who grew up with Armada, Prime, and Bayformers, you will see I would defend a show like this. There's something cathartic about Energon Superlink that we don't get today, in my opinion, that aired before 2012 or my era animation. There are just times you want to go back as a kid. You don't have to worry about adult things and you'll have blissful things to do you always want to do. However, I can burst the bubble and we're sent straight back into reality, the responsibilities, and the people we are counting on to help. That is what Convoy is going through, the trauma of not trying hard enough, but he did his best. To him, it wasn't enough, and that fear ate away at him since. He wasn't sure enough to put his faith into the people he truly cared. He feels like a failure. Unlike Megatron Galvatron, it is a feat that Convoy could not obtain. Galvatron is so confident in himself that the Decepticons who follow him, like how Galvatron, can make massive risk to change and they don't care if he misses them. Galvatron can fail so many times, but the Decepticons will still love him, is that he tried. Unlike Convoy, it is tougher to convince others he is a good robot, but misses his mark on what he could provide. Almost like he fearmongers to make everyone scared that his way is the only way to save the universe. That is the thing. He is jealous on Galvatron. He doesn't understand how to give those needs are met and provide that safe net on his team. Existing is one thing, but sometimes it's better to be dead as a good person than living on as a monster. Or a better extent, Convoy never being born at all. Yet what is driving him to keep living on anyways? He does matter actually, even though he doesn't see it. There are people out there in any universe telling Convoy to keep going and seek the ending to your journey. He needs someone to push him to see his dream fulfilled. It is Convoy's friends and family he makes the journey on. He makes his life fulfilling and why he becomes the leader in the first place. He is tired. No one's taking up his responsibilities. And his kindness is what took his choice on making that decision. He didn't ask to become one, but when no one is brave enough to take a step to help others, there is no peace in the universe. No one will be safe. He sacrificed his own eternal rest with the Allspark for others to be with the Allspark. Even though that's an existentialism on life, but it's a place of being released from your suffering and giving you a peace of mind. Being okay or having an outlook on death positive is okay. It's better to do the things you want now than later. Convoy didn't understand his role when Wingsaber died. He started to get his act together. With the form he took when Wing's Dagger is reborn as Wingsaber is the form that he slowly helped him destroying that wall placed on himself. It gave him back his own hope and his path to saving the universe once again. Even though he will be going to the darkness alone, he no longer fears that burden anymore. It is knowing that things will be alright what gives Convoy his own peace, his eternal rest. That is the hope he brings to everyone who believes in him. That is the reason why the Autobots follow him. They also want to see how the story ends. When he found his own hope and his own will to trust within himself, he started to open up his own burdens that he put up around himself. He can be emotionally vulnerable to the people he loved, as he is able to trust his friends, again, to defeat the evil as a team. Look, I am trying to take whatever part I have with this show, as I already said my woes in the review. This show isn't bad, but if you watch Micron Legend Canon and continue on to Superlink, that is how I can give you the best experience for the show. In the end, the fight between Convoy and Galvatron will never stop until one falls. However, they are equally matched anyways, until someone powerful enough to completely stop their fighting, which is Unicron or Primus. Other than that, their fight is infinite. By episode 51, I am satisfied how Energon Superlink ends on the canon of Armada and onto the Galaxy Force season, as I will make video on the whole lore of the Unicron trilogy canon. But at the end of the show, most Decepticons are gone, as they went into the Unicron energy spark sun, as it was Galvatron's will or energy to supply the birth of a new sun, or better yet, a universe for our characters to be in. That is good enough for me, I guess. There's always a tomorrow, and we always look forward towards that feeling forever and keep continuing on, to finally wake underneath the morning sun. That is what Superlink Energon is supposed to tell us despite its flaws. However, would it convince you to watch the show yourself? Probably not. Even though the world will get dark and nothing matters, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. It's a matter of how much you want to endure that pain and keep going, you get rewarded for it. Just like Demolisher and Snowcat, we are too related at the end of the season, on how the story ends and how you do with your life. This moment right here, Convoy and Galvatron's story has ended, as these two don't come back for the Galaxy Force canon. They are left in the middle of nowhere, pondering what should they do next, similarly how Convoy was in the beginning of the show. I kind of see them just hanging around with Convoy's team as Demolisher used to in the beginning of the show, but who knows how those two stories will end. I just hope they're okay. We finally made it! I did it. I finished Grand Convoy analysis. I have to thank you all for the time, all you encouraged me to do, as we are continuing to the Galaxy Force canon Convoy. My goodness me, I am almost at the end of this rabbit hole, and I have other characters to do. Thank you so much for sticking around through, and I hope to see you in the next one. You all be kind out there. I'll leave you once more. Goodbye. Bye-bye.